So I was recently talking to a friend of mine about the new Microsoft underwater data center. Think about that. The ocean is being used to cool a data center. That's awesome! And now they're working on using tidal energy to power this thing? Talk about the ultimate green solution. Or should we say blue? Now there's a long way to go in developing the potential here, but this could open up whole new worlds for the data center industry. My buddy's answer? What's the big deal? Computers live in water every day. Huh? You know, in the clouds. Friends, you can't make this up. That interesting perspective aside, I do run into misconceptions every day, of which I want to address a few here. First, some housekeeping. What is the cloud and where does it live? You can look up any number of definitions. For the sake of this conversation, the cloud is simply compute, networking, and storage infrastructure wrapped in virtualization software. It's usually accessed over the internet and almost always lives in a data center. No water vapor involved. So let's get to the misconceptions. Number one, everybody is moving to the cloud. Before we start loading the moving trucks, let's clarify which cloud we're talking about. In general, there are two, public cloud and hosted private cloud. Public cloud is using someone else's shared infrastructure in a hyperscale data center, and they give you a little slice of it. Hosted private cloud means you get a dedicated environment, usually in a hosted data center. When most people say public cloud, you want to think Amazon, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. There are others, but those are the current big three. Research by Synergy suggests there will be 500 hyperscale data centers by 2019 for all of that public cloud, and Gartner predicts that by 2021, public cloud will be 28% of the total market share. So it's true. Everyone is moving to the cloud. Ish. Is everyone moving something to the cloud? Probably. But 72% of workloads aren't moving. So is cloud going to eat the world? I don't think so. Is it here to stay and a key part of your IT strategy? Absolutely. Misconception number two. Everyone's leaving the cloud and moving back to colocation. I hear this more often than I expected, and I believe it stems from two common scenarios. First, early adopters raced to the cloud before their applications, solutions were fully vetted. Secondly, runaway expenses. Moving from cloud and back to colo is referred to by a number of terms. Cloud repatriation or rebounding. It could also be called the boomerang effect or cloud fatigue. Is it true that some very public firms have left their cloud deployment to return to colocation? Sure. But in almost every case, this was driven by costs as a result of explosive growth. For example, Dropbox reported the company saved $75 million by moving back to colocation, and Groupon suggested its move was because of costs as well. But here's the thing. Basically, they grew into a new model where colocation fit better. But what are average businesses saying? Well, there are many reasons companies of any size may experience repatriation. A few examples I hear among customers are, the deployment was meant to be temporary all along. The talent supporting the deployment changed or left. Performance was less than expected, or costs were higher than anticipated. The bottom line is this. As organizations gain more experience, they're better able to refine their workloads and performance requirements. The result is much greater success in optimized cloud deployments, and as a result, repatriation is much less common than it used to be. Misconception number three, the cloud is cheap. I hear this all the time. The cloud must be cheaper since I only pay for what I use, right? First, let me say, the cloud was not deployed to be more or less expensive than a non-cloud environment. It was built to be more efficient, flexible, and to scale up and down as the business requires, even to respond instantly to unforeseen demands. So, is it true? Is the cloud cheaper? Well, according to analysts at 451 Research, it's reported that 35% of all cloud spend was wasted. Think that's bad. In addition to that, they found that every person they interviewed underestimated the amount of waste they were spending. That's frightening. Is this the fault of the cloud? Not necessarily. Some argue that there is no waste in the cloud. What does frequently happen is a system or solution is built in a data center environment, and then they pick it up and move it to a cloud platform without optimizing it, leading to inefficiencies, not placing the correct controls in place to prevent system creep or bloat from the initial deployment or ongoing management. Because of this, the cloud is frequently much more expensive than expected, but there is a solution: governance. With the right design, systems, processes, and people in place, your environment can be optimized to a predictable spend model where you eliminate almost all of your waste. And the last misconception: the public cloud is not secure. It may be difficult to believe given the breaches we see in the news, but this statement is actually false. I'll explain my reasoning by examining 3 of the largest security breaches in recent years: Verizon, Uber, and Deloitte. There are others, but let's start with these. When we get down to the root of the problem, it turns out that these 3 have something very important in common. Verizon had unprotected storage. Hackers stole the login credentials from Uber. Deloitte wasn't using two-factor authentication. So what do they all have in common? User or human error played a significant part in the breach. But does that make the cloud or the data centers they live in unsafe or insecure? Consider this: what idea or piece of data is either in someone's cloud or a data center? The answer is none. The ideas of the whole world live in a cloud or in a data center, and the cloud lives in a data center. Once upon a time, the formula or recipe for Coca-Cola lived in a safe. Now it lives in a cloud or in a data center. Was the recipe unsafe in a safe? Can you say it that way? It was if you take the combination to the side of it. It was at risk if you didn't have systems to safeguard that data and then effectively manage the systems. It wasn't the fault of the safe walls or the lock. It was the people who managed it. One last illustration. It's been reported that hackers try to penetrate the Pentagon 160,000 times a year. It's a fact that someone's going to try to steal your data no matter where it's stored. But it's important to remember, usually, it isn't the system that's flawed when a problem or breach occurs. It's the management of the system. Always has been, always will be. Time and time, it comes down to human error. I hope you enjoyed this brief run through of some common misconceptions or myths. If we missed something, let me know. Love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for joining me today and making me part of your world. What? Too much? You can't have too much, Little Mermaid. My 3 daughters tell me that all the time. Make it a great day, even if it is under the sea. See you next time.